आदि शक्ति नमो नमः, सर्व शक्ति नमो नमः।
मधुकैटभवित्वंसि वीधात्रिवरदे नमः। रूपं देहि जयं देहि यशो देहि दिशो जहि। महिषासुरनिर्नाशि भक्तानां सुखदे नमः। रूपं देहि जयं देहि यशो देहि दिशो जहि। धूम्रनेत्रवदे देहि धर्मकामार्थदायिनि। रूपं देहि जयं देहि यशो देहि दिशो जहि। रक्तबीजवदे देहि चण्डमुण्डा विनाशिनी। रूपं देहि जयं देहि यशो देहि दिशो जहि। निशुम्भशुम्भनिर्नाशि त्रिलोक्यशुभदे नमः। रूपं देहि जयं देहि यशो देहि दिशो जहि।
What a beautiful start to Aadi Shakti. I'm going to share some stories with you today. And the first story that I'm going to share with you is from my book, Aadi Shakti. The story is called Between Divine and Mortal. Something that has always intrigued me is the way the equation changes between a creator and his creation the moment that creation transforms from being a piece of art to God. You must be wondering where I'm coming from. This is about the life of an idol maker in Kumartuli, Bengal. These are the people who create a piece of art and then suddenly, over a period of time, with every phase of their creation and with every stroke of their brush, this piece of art that was once their own creation becomes the creator. And this equation has always perplexed me. How is it? How does it feel? How does it feel for a creator to suddenly change from being the parent to becoming the child? So this is a story about Mahadev Pal. He's a bachelor. He lives in Kumartuli, Bengal, and he earns his living by creating the idols of Durga. So during this festive time of the year, he gets lots of orders, especially from NRI clients across the world. And he is a master craftsman. He is a master artist. He knows his job. So every year he creates these, say, hundreds or tens of idols, not just himself, but he has a whole school or a community of people helping him. But Mahadev has a very simple life. So in his life, he's a bachelor. He doesn't have a family. He's a believer, but he is also not somebody who is very expressive. So he lives a simple life of 2 meals a day, and he has no addiction whatsoever. He's dedicated his entire life to Ma Durga and the making of Ma Durga. So one day there comes an order from an overseas client who wants the Durga idol to look very much like an ordinary human being. So Mahadev gets into the business of creating this piece of work. And as he creates this Durga out of the mud and straw and his imagination, he starts getting attached to his piece of art. And he treats her like a companion. he starts, so this is a long process. It takes about 3 or 4 months, and day in and day out, he only has this Durga that he's working on. And he starts getting very close to her. So one day, Mahadev actually has only one addiction in life, which is pan. You know, the betel leaf. So before going off to sleep, he would end his day by chewing a pan. So one day, just as he's, eating his pan, he looks at his Durga, half done, not fully done yet, and suddenly has this vague desire to offer her a pan. In an ideal world, we do not offer anything to the gods or the goddesses or the deities until the pran pratishtha happens, which is to say you are actually putting in life with, an idol becomes a god after you instill life in them. So we don't make any offerings before that process is done, ritually done. Mahadev, however, he digresses from the norm, and he offers his Durga, the idol, a pan. And every day this becomes a ritual between the two of them. So he pours his heart out to his Durga, tells her about what's happening, and she stays muted. She's listening. She's inanimate, right? And Mahadev builds this relationship with her until the day of the Mahalaya, or the end of Pitri Paksh, when the Chakshudan happens, which is when you start drawing the eyes of the goddess. So he does that, and he kind of starts feeling very possessive about this goddess. He doesn't want to let her go. And he's struggling, there's a dilemma in his mind. He is on one hand thinking, she's mine, I created her. And on the other hand, he is thinking, oh my God, she's the goddess. I can't be thinking about her like that, right? But she is my companion. I'm going to really miss her. I don't like the idea of separation from her. While this turmoil is going on in his mind, he gets to know that his client wants the order to be dispatched. And his goddess is ready. Everybody else is waiting to, bubble wrap her and get things done. He is so upset that he wants to live in denial of this separation, this pang of separation. So he delegates the job of packing this goddess off, the send-off, to somebody else, and very broken-heartedly walks into his own room, where he sees that the box of pan, where he would typically keep his pan, that was lying open. And so that is lying open, and there is no pan. So he feels very strange that, it is only me and the goddess. Where did all my pan go? And so he rushes out because he sees that the box of pan is missing. The pan is missing from the box. And he sees, lo and behold, in one corner of this entire workshop where all the idols are kept, there is this little goddess who looks very human, because that's how it was modeled, is bubble wrapped, and on one corner, on one corner of the lips, he finds a little bit of betel juice, the pan juice. And that's where the story ends. So of course this is fiction, this is a figment of my imagination, but the reason why I got inspired to write this story or to tell this story today to you is it's a strange equation when humans become God and create gods, and gods become human and come down to our levels to be with us. So between divine and mortal, there is an equation of love, of respect, of companionship, and of mutual understanding. It is through music and dance that we are going to be sharing different aspects of this Aadi Shakti, the woman, the power, the real power within you and me. Over to Jayeeta for the next performance.
Durga, the savior of gods and men. Kali, the goddess of creation and destruction. Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and well-being. But all of them are various manifestations of the same power behind the phenomena of coming into being and passing away.
Aham Rudrei vivasuvishcharamyaham Maditvai Rutavishvadevayyaham Aham Mitravaruno bha Vibharyaham Indragni Aham Ashvino bhayaham Aham Somamahanasam Vibharyaham Tvashtaramutakushanam bhagam aham dvadhami dravidam habishvate suprabhya yajamanaya sunyate aham rashtri sangamani vasuna Chikitushi prathama yagiya namatam madeva vadadhu purutrang bhurishtha tranghuriya veshayantim mayaso anyamati Yobi Pashvati Yaha Praniti Yai Srinokti Yuktam Amantavo Manta Upakshiyantim Srudhi Sruta Sradhivante Vadami.
The next story that I'm going to share is about my great-grandmother, Bindubashini Devi. I've told you stories about her in the past. She was a zamindar and she was a very different woman for that period of time. So this is again early 19th century Bengal, and my great-grandmother who was managing the zamindari of our ancestral property, the ancestral wealth, lived in a place called Balurghat in North Bengal. Now this is bordering the India and Bangladesh borders. So there was a time when the men of the house apparently had gone out, so none of them were present, and Bindubashini Devi, my great-grandmother, was alone at home. I wouldn't say she was alone at home. That wasn't right. So she was home with only the other women and children. So she was looking after the women and children at home. And as I may have shared previously several times, we have an ancestral Kali Mandir or Kali temple within the premise of the zamindari. So my great grandmother actually finished her evening aarti. She did all that she, finished doing all the rituals, performed the puja, and just as she was locking the temple door, she heard some noise. Now the men were all away, and there were of course a couple of lathels or men, guards, but they were not really armed. And so she heard this noise and was informed in a few minutes that the house had been attacked. Our home had been attacked by dacoits. Now, the dacoits in those days obviously were very different, and they belonged to a different league. They were worshippers of the goddess Kali, and they would usually give a notice or a warning to the houses they raided. This was not the case here. These dacoits, they had raided without any warning, but there were quite a few of them, and they were actually charging in. So the story goes that my great grandmother, who had just finished her evening aarti, was wearing a white and red sari, and she had her hair open, she had a big bindi, and she took out the kharga, or the weapon from the hand of the deity and from the temple, and she opened the door of the temple and stood there with the kharga in her hand. And when the dacoits charged, when the robbers came in and they saw this woman who was slightly, of a darker complexion, standing there with her hair open in a white and red sari, holding a kharga in her hand, something happened. I actually get goosepimples when I say this. So something happened, and they dropped their weapons and they folded their hands in prayers, and they apologized, and they believed that they saw the goddess Kali in her. And the dacoits left, promising never to come back to our household. It's been 200 years since, and there has never been a case of robbery or theft in our house. And this is how we believe that the goddess protects us. This is how we believe that the woman of the house empowered herself and realized the inner strength in her character, in her personality, and she became Shakti. And when she became Shakti, when she took that courageous step to face what was tormenting at her doorsteps, right? Whatever was charging at her doorsteps, and she took the weapon out of the goddess's hand to single-handedly fight the robbers, the rest of the world gave in. And I think it is very metaphorical, because that is what we need to do today. When you see things going wrong, when you see things, when you're faced with danger, when you're seeing a challenge at your doorstep, you can't be standing there waiting for help. You have to take charge. You have to take the weapon in your hand and fight for your defense and defend those who you are responsible for. So that's the message I want to leave everyone with, and with this story, and it's something very, very close to my heart, and I wanted to share this with you.
তুমি গতি হারিণী তুমি হৈমবতী তুমি অহং নাশিনী হৈমবতী তুমি অহং নাশিনী জগত জানে বিপদলনি জগত জানে বিপদলনি জগৎ দাত্রী ত্রাণকারিণী জগৎ দাত্রী ত্রাণকারিণী তুমি আদি জননী মা তুমি আদি জননী ভুবন মোহিনী বন্দে তোমারে দুর্গে দুর্গতি হারিণী মা দুর্গে দুর্গতি হারিণী
Dinku da dikka dinku taka dinku da dinku da kidanak dim dim kuku taka naka tari kidanak dinku da kudriki datta lanku taka datta dinku da dikka dinku da kidanak dim dim kuku taka naka tari kidanak dinku da kudriki datta lanku taka datta dinku da takata dinku da krita dinku da nakata dinku da datta dinku takata dinku krita dinku nakata dinku da tari tari tattana tana tajunu junu tadimi tadinginna tum takka tadinginna tum takka diku tadinginna tum tattari tari tattana tana tajunu junu tadimi tadinginna tum takka tadinginna tum takka diku tadinginna tum tattari tari tattana tana tajunu junu tadimi tadinginna tum takka tadinginna tum takka diku tadinginna tum
Mahishashurmardini 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 Mahishashurmardini
The next story that I'm going to share is a very interesting one. It is a mix of folklore and what the locals around that area believe. So this story takes you to a place called Kuldhara in the Jaisalmer district of Rajasthan, India. Kuldhara was founded in the 13th century by Paliwal Brahmins, and since the 19th century it has been found to be deserted. It's an abandoned village. And why is the village abandoned? Then no one knows. Of course, there are speculations. There are speculations that there was a dwindling water supply, there was a shortage of water. There are also speculations about Kuldhara having undergone an earthquake. However, people around that area believe that the place is haunted. And the government of India has actually recognized Kuldhara as a haunted destination. So a lot of tourists actually come to Kuldhara to visit this place. Now, what is the story? What happened in 19th century? Why did a prosperous village suddenly become a deserted, haunted, establishment, a haunted place? Now, the story goes like this, that once upon a time, long, long ago, there lived a very treacherous tyrant, a very powerful but treacherous man called Zalim Singh, who was the Diwan of Jaisalmer. And people were really scared of Zalim Singh, for, as the name suggests, he was really a Zalim. And apparently, Zalim Singh took interest in one of the village girls. The girl clearly wasn't interested, but Zalim Singh's persuasions of that girl, or his interest, led him and his soldiers to come to the village to say that we want the girl. We want to take her away. The villagers wanted a day. So they said, hold on, we will not give our girl to you today. Can you come back tomorrow morning? And for some reason, and no one knows why, but Zalim Singh agreed to this, and his soldiers left the village only to come back the next day. But when they did come back the next day, they found the village to be completely empty, absolutely abandoned. So the locals believe that in order to save that girl's honor, the entire village of Paliwal Brahmins packed up and disappeared into the night. They left without any hesitation. They left without any doubt that their primary responsibility as a community of adults, as a community of responsible humans, was to protect the honor of the daughter of the village. And it is heart touching, and it is so relevant in today's times. There is a demand of the day where we have to come forward and protect our daughters. We have to do whatever it takes to protect our daughters. And this village, imagine, in the 19th century, actually took a decision against a man who was much superior to them in power, in wealth, and in stature. They actually took a decision, and the whole village was deserted. Everybody abandoned, everyone exited from the village. The Paliwal Brahmins apparently left the village with a sharp or a curse that no one else will ever be able to settle in that village. And that's why it is called haunted. It is haunted and no one lives there anymore. But this story of Kuldhara has been such an inspiration for many of us. In fact, it is I have kind of adapted this into another story that I have written for my book, for my next book. And it continues to inspire me. And I really think that when people look at India of today, they should look back and see the India of yesterday and see how our social values, how the value system actually recognized the women not as somebody who would be gifted away or who would be exploited, but someone who was either an equal or needed protection and therefore was meant to be protected by the rest of the village. So this is a story that I really wanted to share. And from here, we will move on to a beautiful song, a dance actually by Jayeeta, wherein she talks about, the music actually tells you about so many of our daughters. So our daughters are very precious, like this daughter was, the girl from Kuldhara was. So many of our daughters stay so far away from homes, and during this time of the year, especially in Bengali households, the daughters usually come home as Ma Durga comes home with her family, with her children to visit her parents. And so many of us are away from our parents, and during these difficult times that the whole world is going through, there isn't much of a festivity, And I think this song and this presentation will touch many chords across the world, because a lot of mothers are feeling the same way for their daughters. Aadi Shakti Namo Namo, Sarv Shakti Namo Namo, Pritam Bhagwati Namo Namo, Kundalini Mata Shakti Namo Namo, Mata Shakti Namo Namo. What is Aadi Shakti? She's the daughter of the earth. She's the mother of fire. She carries the ocean in her womb, the air on her feet, and the universe in her lines of destiny. Let us pledge to respect the Aadi Shakti in the real world, beyond the puja pandals, beyond the celebration and festivities. Let the light of this power spread across humanity for an equal and just world.
We